For many years now, the University of Kentucky has been absolutely elite when it comes to recruiting, as they've managed to bring in countless high-end 4- and 5-star talents that proceeded to dominate at the college level, with many of them going on to also find success in the NBA. And with stars and rankings in mind, it got me thinking, who exactly are the highest-rated recruits Kentucky has ever brought in, and how many of them were actually able to live up to the hype? In an effort to answer these questions, I'm going to be looking at the 10 highest-rated recruits to ever come through Kentucky and analyze how their basketball careers ended up panning out. If you're curious where I'm getting my rankings from, I'll be using the composite player rankings from 24/7 Sports to find the 10 guys with the highest ratings. And just to clarify, these rankings are based purely on these players' ratings as high school recruits. How they performed while at Kentucky or in the NBA has no relevance or bearing on this top 10 list whatsoever. If you enjoy this type of content and want to see more, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. Coming in as Kentucky's 10th highest rated recruit of all time, we have the small forward Brandon Boston Jr. from the 2020 class with a rating of 99.84. And just for clarification, the highest rating a player can receive in 24/7 system is a 1, so hopefully that provides some perspective here. But anyways, Brandon played his senior high school season at the highly regarded Sierra Canyon High School. And despite being on a team loaded with other 4- and 5-star players, Brandon stood out as one of the best scorers not just on his team, but in the entire country. He was the prototypical lengthy wing that could score at all 3 levels, a skill set very valuable in today's basketball landscape. And his capabilities as a scorer, alongside his potential upside as a defender, were the primary reasons why he was rated so highly. And upon signing with Kentucky, he was expected to be one of the primary scoring options for a fairly young Wildcat team. And during his freshman season, he definitely showed tons of flashes of being that prolific scorer he was hyped up to be, averaging 11 points alongside 4 rebounds and a steal per game. The only issue, however, was that he wasn't always the most efficient player, as seen by his shooting splits of just 35% from the field and 30% from 3. Although some believe he would have benefited greatly from another year in college, Brandon would ultimately decide to declare for the NBA draft after his freshman season. And despite his efficiency struggles, Brandon still displayed a ton of potential as a scorer, and would thus go on to be drafted in the 2nd round with the 51st pick by the Memphis Grizzlies, and then immediately traded to the LA Clippers. And after a few seasons with the Clippers receiving limited minutes, he now finds himself on the Pelicans, where he finally appears to be having a breakout season. He's averaging a career high in minutes while also putting up career bests of 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. Additionally, his lack of efficiency that plagued him in college and early in his NBA career also seems to be heading in the right direction. As of now, he's definitely one of the bright spots for a Pelicans team that's really struggling at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how he continues to develop going forward. Moving on now to the 9th highest rated Kentucky recruit of all time, we have the power forward Aaron Bradshaw from the 2023 class with a rating of 99.88. Although he didn't have the most polished game coming out of high school, much of the excitement around Bradshaw revolved around his potential, as he was a legitimate 7-footer with impressive mobility, leaping ability, and even displayed some flashes of having a semi-reliable jump shot. And that, combined with being one of the best rim protectors in the country, made him a highly regarded prospect. Upon playing his freshman season at Kentucky, however, things unfortunately just never really worked out, as most of the physical tools and skill sets he displayed in high school appeared to just not translate as well to the next level as many people thought. He did show some flashes as a solid rim protector at times and even perimeter shooting, but overall, he'd go on to have a pretty disappointing season, averaging just 13 minutes a game, and putting up a stat line of 4 points and 3 rebounds. Following his freshman season, he'd wind up transferring out of Kentucky, eventually landing with Ohio State, where so far this season, he's been featured in a much bigger role. He has dealt with some undisclosed issues off the court that have caused him to miss a decent chunk of the season, but hopefully when he's fully back to playing with no distractions, he'll be able to start putting things together and show some more flashes of being the player he was expected to be coming out of high school. As of now, however, I don't think it'd be too much of a stretch to say that he certainly hasn't lived up to expectations so far. Up next, as Kentucky's number 8 all-time recruit, we have the big man DeMarcus Cousins from the 2009 class with a rating of 99.89. As I'm sure most of you can imagine, Cousins was an absolute bully in high school, measuring in at the time at 6'10", 250 pounds, and pairing that with his bruising physical play style, Cousins was able to easily dominate the paint on both ends of the floor, since there weren't many players in high school that could match up with him. And upon joining the Kentucky Wildcats, this style of play was able to translate pretty seamlessly to the college level, as he'd go on to be one of the most dominant players in college basketball. For his freshman year, he'd put up averages of 15 points, 9 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks per game en route to being named a consensus All-American. At the conclusion of the season, Cousins would decide to forgo his remaining eligibility and declare for the 2010 NBA draft, as he was viewed as one of the top prospects in the class. And in the draft, he'd go on to be selected with the 5th pick by the Sacramento Kings. And as I'm sure most of you already know, Cousins would go on to have a very successful NBA career. In addition to being the physical player in the paint he'd always been, he also managed to really flesh out and develop other parts of his game, greatly improving as a ball handler and also becoming a solid three-point shooter. As a result, he'd go on to be a 4-time All-Star, was named with 2 All-NBA teams, and during his prime was arguably the best center in the NBA. Injuries would unfortunately derail his career later on, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he was one of the most dominant centers of the 2010s, and one of the best players to ever come through the University of Kentucky. And at number 7, we have another familiar face with the point guard John Wall, also from the 2009 class with a rating of 99-92. Aside from having one of the coldest mixtapes to ever exist, Wall was one of the most electrifying players high school basketball has ever seen. Known for his lightning-quick speed and impressive leaping ability, Wall was also a high-level passer and ball handler with high defensive upside, making him essentially a can't-miss point guard prospect. And after signing with Kentucky, he alongside just discussed DeMarcus Cousins became the best freshman duo in college basketball. Wall's explosive and energizing playstyle garnered national attention as he'd go on to average 16 points, 6 assists, and almost 2 blocks a game, while creating numerous highlights along the way. Like Cousins, Wall would go on to be named a consensus All-American as a true freshman, and would eventually declare for the 2010 NBA draft. He was almost unanimously seen as the best prospect in the class and a guy that a rebuilding franchise could build around. And that's precisely what would end up happening, as Wall would be selected with the 1st pick in the draft by the Washington Wizards, with expectations of being the team's franchise player for the foreseeable future. And on an individual level, he certainly lived up to the hype, going on to be chosen to 5 All-Star teams and becoming arguably the best two-way point guard in the NBA during his prime. Not only that, but he was able to provide a much-needed spark to a Wizards team that had been struggling for many years, helping turn them into a consistent playoff contender for a large part of the 2010s. Unfortunately for Wall, however, injuries would unfortunately catch up to him, with his Achilles tear in the 2019 season being the worst of them, as it sapped most of his speed and balance that had always been his calling card. Wall would make a couple pit stops with other teams after rehabbing his Achilles, but he'd eventually fizzle out of the NBA, last making an appearance in 2023. Certainly a very disappointing end for him, but he'll always be able to hang his hat on being one of the best point guards of the 2010s and being a legend in the eyes of Washington and Kentucky fans alike. Coming in as Kentucky's 6th highest rated recruit of all time is the small forward Justin Edwards from the class of 2023, also with a rating of 99-92 like John Wall. I'm not entirely sure how 24/7 goes about ranking players with the same exact ratings, but this is how they did it, so we'll roll with it. Edwards had pretty much everything you want to see in a modern day wing. A lengthy build, showed promise as a 3-level scorer, had solid ball handling, and also a mechanically sound lefty jumper. Additionally, although he wasn't a lockdown defender by any means, he did have good physical tools and instincts, which got many scouts excited about his two-way potential. However, as I'm sure most Kentucky fans would probably agree with, his freshman year turned out to be pretty underwhelming. He had his flashes as a defender and shooter, putting up averages of 8 points and 3 rebounds on decent shooting splits, but overall he just seemed to lack confidence and never really seemed to settle into things during his time at Kentucky. In my opinion, he's the textbook definition of a guy that would have benefited greatly from staying at least one more year in college. However, he'd ultimately decide to declare for the draft, but would end up going undrafted. The Philadelphia 76ers would take a flyer on him, however, and as of now, he's splitting time between the NBA and the G League. He definitely still has lots of room for improvement, but the tools and talent are undeniably there, so we'll just have to see how much he's able to develop over the next couple years. Getting to the halfway point now, the number 5 highest rated Kentucky recruit of all time is the shooting guard from the 2021 class, Shaedon Sharpe, once again with a rating of 99-92. In terms of just straight up raw athleticism, Shaedon might be the best this list has to offer. His explosiveness and leaping ability was off the charts, and he was a highlight reel waiting to happen every time he drove to the rim. With this in mind, however, he was much more than just a dunker. He also had a pretty well polished and diverse offensive game as well, possessing some solid handles and a silky smooth jumper. And the combination of his insane athleticism and well-rounded game made him an exciting prospect. However, his time at Kentucky ended up being less than notable, and this is due to the fact that he never actually played a single minute in college. Based on what I've seen, his original plan was to graduate high school early and then redshirt the 2021-2022 season, and then suit up for the Wildcats the following year. However, I guess at some point he decided to just ditch that plan and instead just declare for the 2022 draft without ever playing in college. And the crazy part is that this actually ended up working out for him, as he'd go on to be selected 7th overall by the Portland Trail Blazers, and was seen as one of their key pieces for the future. And so far in his young NBA career, he's shown incredible growth each season, and looks primed to become an all-star caliber player in the near future. The Trailblazers obviously still have a lot of work to do before they become competitive again, but as of now, Shaedon looks to be arguably the biggest bright spot on their young and developing roster. Up next, ranking as Kentucky's 4th highest rated recruit of all time is the power forward Julius Randle from the class of 2013, with a rating of 99.94. For those that don't recall, Julius Randle in high school was basically Zion Williamson before Zion was even a thought in people's minds. He was an absolute freak athlete for his size, being built like a tank while also having elite mobility, explosiveness, and even displaying some promise as a jump shooter. And upon signing with Kentucky, he was expected to make an immediate impact as a freshman, and was seen as a likely candidate to go one and done. And that's exactly how things would wind up playing out, with him going on to have a very impressive freshman season, averaging 15 points, 10 rebounds, while being a highlight machine. And after a stellar collegiate season, Randle would go on to declare for the draft as expected, being selected 7th overall by the Los Angeles Lakers. He'd show steady growth with the Lakers before signing with the New Orleans Pelicans, where his career would really take off, proceeding to have a breakout season. Since then, he's consistently been one of the best power forwards in the NBA, being named to 3 All-Star teams and being a key contributor on some solid playoff teams. He is starting to get up there in age, however, so it'll be interesting to see how long he'll be able to maintain his level of play. Getting into the top 3 now, up next is Skal Labissiere, the power forward from the 2015 class with a rating of 99.98. A bit of an obscure name to see in the top 3 for most of you, I'm sure, but coming out of high school, Skal looked like the real deal. He was a lengthy 6'11" big man that could handle the ball, shoot from the perimeter, and lock down the paint as a rim protector. There were some concerns regarding his athleticism and foot speed, but a true two-way big man with incredible upside as a high-level scorer is always going to get scouts and fans excited. So when he announced he was going to play his college ball at Kentucky, there was a ton of hype and expectations, with most mock drafts projecting him to be the #1 pick in the 2016 draft. In his freshman season, however, Skal wouldn't be nearly as impactful as many expected him to be, averaging just 15 minutes a game with averages of 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 block per game. He certainly had his moments and flashes, but it became clear that he just didn't have enough strength or athleticism to be effective on the court, even at the college level. Nonetheless, he'd go on to declare for the 2016 draft, and despite the concerns surrounding him, his ceiling and potential was just so high that somebody was going to take a chance on him. And that team was the Sacramento Kings, who selected him with the 28th pick. And during his brief 4-year NBA career, he proved to be pretty much the same exact player he was in college. A guy that could shoot and give you some quick offense, but overall just wasn't athletic or strong enough to be effective on the floor. As of today, Skal is currently playing in the G League for the Stockton Kings, and is looking to hopefully get one more opportunity in the NBA. In at the runner-up spot for Kentucky's highest-rated recruit of all time is the power forward from the 2011 class, Anthony Davis, with an almost perfect rating of 99.99. So I'm sure most of us have already heard the stories of Anthony Davis in high school. He was originally a shorter guard coming into high school, but eventually hit a massive growth spurt that saw him grow to 6'10" by his senior year, which essentially meant that he was a big man with guard-like skills. And this allowed him to be absolutely dominant on both ends of the floor, averaging 32 points, 22 rebounds, and 7 blocks a game his senior season. And upon coming to Kentucky, he'd continue that domination, going on to have one of the best and most impactful freshman seasons in the history of college basketball, averaging 14 points, 10 rebounds, and over 4 blocks a game while being named the National College Player of the Year. Not only that, but he was the best player and defensive anchor for a Kentucky team that brought home the 2012 National Championship, forever solidifying himself as a school legend. Following his dominant freshman season, Davis would go on to be selected 1st overall in the draft for the New Orleans Hornets, where he was expected to be a future superstar. And from the moment he stepped foot in the league, Anthony Davis has been one of the best players in the entire NBA, being a 9-time All-Star, making multiple All-NBA and All-Defensive teams, alongside being a key piece on a championship team. The only real knock on his career is that he struggled with injuries for so long that have caused him to miss a lot of games, but his accolades and level of play when he has been available speaks for itself. He'll undoubtedly go down as one of the best players of his generation and is a lock for the Hall of Fame after he retires. Additionally, he is and always will be the poster child for Kentucky basketball players succeeding in the NBA. And lastly, to finish up, coming in as the highest rated recruit to ever play for the University of Kentucky, we have Nerlens Noel, the power forward from the class of 2012, falling just short of a perfect rating at 99.99. In a lot of ways, Nerlens was a much more unique prospect than all the other guys in the top 10, because while most were highly praised for their scoring ability or raw athletic talents, Nerlens' calling card was his defense. He obviously still had some crazy dunks and other offensive highlights, but it truly was his capabilities as a rim protector that got scouts excited. And although being an elite rim protector isn't the most flashy or sexy skill set, it's one that will always be highly valuable to any team. And the fact that he was also very athletic and coordinated for his size gave many scouts and fans hope that he could also develop into an elite lob threat and rebounder as well. And throughout his freshman season at Kentucky, Nerlens' rim protection skill set transferred over well, as he was averaging over 4 blocks a game. But he was also contributing offensively as well as on the boards, averaging over 10 points and 9 rebounds respectively. This led to many mock drafts projecting him as the likely #1 pick for the upcoming draft. But this momentum would unfortunately come to a screeching halt, as Nerlens would suffer a torn ACL in the 24th game of the season. Due to concerns regarding the injury, by the time the draft came around, Nerlens was no longer seen as the favorite to go #1. He wouldn't drop too far down the board, however, as he'd still be drafted 6th overall by the Philadelphia 76ers. Nerlens, however, was just never really able to develop the way that many had hoped. He was the definition of a one-dimensional player, and outside of solid defense, he never really brought much to the table. He couldn't dribble, couldn't shoot, and never really developed the play strength to be an effective rebounder or reliable scorer on the rim. As a result, Nerlens mostly settled in as a journeyman role player for various teams over the years. Now, bear in mind, a 9-year NBA career is nothing to scoff at, and he definitely did show tons of promise at times. He was unfortunately just never quite able to put everything together and fully reach the hype that he had coming out of high school in Kentucky. So that was the 10 highest rated recruits to ever play for the University of Kentucky and how their basketball careers panned out. Overall, there's been a varying range of success, with some players going on to establish themselves as NBA stars, others becoming solid role players, and a couple currently still playing in college. Although there were some players that didn't quite live up to expectations, I'd say Kentucky did a pretty admirable job getting the most out of their top recruits during their time in college, and helping develop them to get to the next level. Going forward, I'm confident they'll continue to bring in top talent and be the elite recruiters they've been for many years now, and continue to be one of the top programs in the country. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. If you have any thoughts on the players in this video, or want me to make a similar video for a different school, be sure to leave a comment down below. This is HGP signing off. As always, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm out. Peace.